Nelson?
Thank you, Moises. Thank you to NMAC for inviting me. I haven't done one of these in a while. I've been running my business, got off disability, which is a good thing. This is very personal, a very personal topic for me. I have very strong biases and opinions. I've been an activist since 1987. And my focus in the past 20 years probably has been multidrug resistance. Dr. Gandhi has beautifully presented, thank God, it was a great intro, the fact that we are in a much better place in 2023 compared to even 5 years ago or even 6 years ago. I have lived with multidrug resistance forever. I developed resistance to every single drug. Since I joined every single study in the 80s and 90s, and that exposed me to what we call sequential monotherapy. Developed resistance to all classes. It wasn't until 10 years ago that I was put on ibalizumab, which is Trogarzo, or the IV that the doctor talked about, and Maraviroc, that the doctor talked about it too, and raltegravir, and that finally brought my viral load to undetectable. So it was a struggle, even though I'm pretty well informed. I'm one of those, I'm 64 years old, one of those long-term survivors that was eager to join studies and help research to get us more drugs approved, but also many of us have been a victim of research by being exposed to substandard therapies back in the days. But hey, we are in a much better place. I'm a happy guy, to be honest with you, when it comes to multidrug resistance. However, like Dr. Gandhi said, it takes a very knowledgeable doctor to manage patients like me and patients that have 2, 3, 4 class resistance, and also have something I'm going to talk about that is not talked about a lot. Dr. Gandhi probably can agree with me. It's the immunologic non-responders. Those people that have been, like me, undetectable for a while now, thank God, even with MDR, that have not reached CD4 levels over 300. I live around 250, even though I take care of myself and everything else. So there's a minority of those patients, and that's what I call the next frontier for activism. So this is, next slide, please. I just gave a little intro on why this is so personal for me. And who are these people with multidrug resistance? And Dr. Gandhi, I think, did a pretty good review. But this is, I love graphs, and this is a well-done one. Some of us were exposed to well, first of all, I was diagnosed in 85, 86 when the test came out, and there was no drug, no treatments, till probably the late 80s, where I joined the ACT study. Thank God I was put on placebo. I found out that later, because that was a high dose, and my partner died of in the treatment arm with 1,000 milligrams. I forgot how much it was. So we were jumping because we wanted to survive. And then obviously we joined the studies on DDI, D4T, DDC, like the doctor said, in the early 90s, and developed sequential monotherapy-related resistance. Some of us also joined the first study for protease inhibitors, which was the Roche drug Fortabase, which was called something else back then, which only 10% of it got absorbed in the bloodstream, and we developed resistance right away to most of the PI classes there, the protease inhibitors. So as I said, I think many doctors, many conferences I go to, they focus on the fact that multidrug resistance happens mostly because of lack of adherence. And that may be partly true, but they forget that there is a population of us, long-term survivors aging with HIV, that were actually volunteers for all these great drugs to be approved, but we suffer the consequences. And it's not like we knew any better, or doctors knew any better. It was what it was. And some of us are alive maybe because we joined these studies. But I have to say, I do look back and say, you were a little aggressive in your approach. Anyway, so by in the late 90s, we had this hit hard, hit early, where they would put people on treatments right away. Some of them were not as great. back in the late 90s, and they developed resistance. Then we went through a phase of deferral of therapy. And then obviously in the 2000s, we started getting the good treatments, not only the PIs and then the integrates. So obviously things got better, but many of us lingered when it comes to viral load. Next slide, please. And this is something I just drew last week, and it's not accurate. I've been wanting to do this for a while. And hopefully people eventually, my activist friends, I'm part of the AIDS Activist Treatment Coalition, Research Coalition in the United States, like around 50 of us. And I hopefully them and clinicians can help me put some numbers together for this. But anyways, this is data from 2019 from the CDC, where they explained that there's around 1.2 million of us in the United States with HIV. Unfortunately, 44% of those people have detectable viral load. Hopefully in 2023, we'll probably have a better number than that, but that's pretty upsetting, pretty concerning, even though we have all these drugs and we have patient assistance programs, that there's still people out there with detectable viral load. There are almost 35 new infections, although I just saw data last week that decreased significantly last year. There's an estimated one in 8 people living with HIV that don't know they have it. So that's around 12.5%. I calculated. I have a little drawing here on the ball, don't know. And about 66% of people living with HIV receive some kind of care, 50% retaining care, and 56% have undetectable viral load. So I drew a line here in the whole, so basically 56%. Some of us are multi-drug resistant, and I would say more like 2 or 3 classes. And we don't know the percentage of total of us, of the 1.2 million. I'm going to try to dig some, and Dr. Gandhi probably can help me find some references for that. But I've seen numbers anywhere from 15 to 20% have at least 2 plus HIV ARV class resistance. But and as Dr. Gandhi said, we have a lot more options for MDR, for the multi-drug resistant. The INRs, immunological non-responders, and people like me, that most of us may be MDR, may have multi-drug resistance. I would probably assume most of us are, but I don't have the numbers. Some cohorts show that around 17% of people on long-term suppressive therapy with HIV viral loads undetectable still do not reach CD4 cells over 300, and they do not have a complete immune reconstitution. So that's why they're called immunological non-responders. They're virological responders because they're undetectable viral load, but they're immunological non-responders. So there's an overlap, obviously, in the MDR multi-drug resistant and the INRs, the immunological non-responders. I live in this little hole here, in this little circle. Obviously, some of us have undetected viral load, some people may not. So this is just a very extrapolated kind of figure I made to kind of show where we live. Some of us live basically in this circle, and some of us in the overlap of that. So my focus now as an activist, since MDR is doing much better, the MDR activist research and pipeline is concentrating on those of us and with INR. Next slide, please. Yeah, in the heavily treatment experience, that's how some of us, some researchers call us, are obviously people with limited treatment options. And Dr. Gandhi said that probably is not as critical in 2023 because we have great, really good drugs. Thank God. We're a very privileged country in the United States. Most countries don't have access to those newer drugs that have actually helped a lot. And there are 2 primary target populations, obviously the older people like me that have been exposed to less potent regimens in the past, and the young people that were born with HIV years ago, so they're now adults with multi-drug resistance. Next slide, please. And Dr. Gandhi mentioned the generic or names of all these drugs. I just wanted to show the brand names since we live in that world as a patient. We hardly hear, unless you're in research, hear the generics. But I'm actually taking, yeah, I'm actually, except Selenka, I'm definitely have my eye on that in case that I fail what I'm on, which I'm not hoping to. But I'm on Rukubia, which is for Tensavir twice a day, big pills, no side effects, thank God. You can take it with or without food. Some of us are lucky enough to be R-tropic, CCR5 tropic, meaning our virus preserving the X-force, which are a minority. But many of us, when we do a tropism test, and Dr. Gandhi mentioned it, turn out to be R5 tropic, so we can take Maraviroc, that's also twice a day in my case. And I was on Trogarzo until recently, long story, for 8 years. I was on the phase 2 study, and then the drug, the IV, every 2 weeks got approved, and I stayed on it for a while. So I have, experience with this. And Pifeltro, which is a new non-new, not new, it was probably approved like 2 or 3 years ago, from Merck, has also shown very high efficacy in people with pre-existing non-nuc mutations. In my case, I was exposed to Sustiva and Nevirapine and had resistance, and Bifeltra actually worked. So I'm taking that drug too. And obviously, the new drug that Dr. Gandhi said it was approved in December last year is the injectable every 6 months. Very exciting. It's a new class. I'm still looking for more data post-approval, and Gilead is doing some research with other long-acting agents that may work with it. So we're kind of exciting that long-acting. There are 2 long-acting agents in multidrug resistance. Trogarzo is long-acting, it's every 2 weeks, and now Sulenka, which is every 6 months. So that's something I never thought I would have in my life. So that's definitely a plus. Next slide, please. So I'm going to jump into my new obsession, the INR activism. Next slide, please. We met with the FDA like 6 years ago, and they were and that's a long story. So I don't have much time, but the FDA is very supportive of any new research done in this population that basically has been left behind. Most people with HIV reach really good CD4 levels, like Dr. Gandhi said. The rapid increase in CD4s usually happens in the beginning of treatment, like 3 months or so, but if followed by steady increases over time. So people get to be over 500 CD4s, which is considered normal immune response or good immune response. So, maintenance of viral suppression results in most people eventually recovering to quote-unquote normal T cells. But 15 to 20% of us who started treatment at low CD4 levels, I didn't, I started at 350, may plateau at low counts and have poor CD4 cell recovery. Even those of us that have been undetectable, have had undetectable overload for many years, and as we age, some of us start losing CD4s due to basically aging of the immune system itself. So that's an area that needs to be researched more. Actually, those patients are excluded from studies in many times with low CD4 counts, and also a lot of us are older than 60, and a lot of studies are excluding people that are older than 60 years of age. So the AIDS Treatment Activist Coalition, we're really fighting hard to get more inclusion of people with lower CD4 cells and also older patients over 60, 65. So that's probably going to happen soon. We're really making a lot of inroads in that. And obviously, the earlier you start in your infection, the better your chances for immune CD4 cell recovery. Next slide, please. And this is basically an old cohort published in 2012, where basically showing that the lower your CD4 cells, the higher your chances of not only mortality, but also illness and comorbidities. So, and it's something that everybody knows. I mean, as a patient, I know it. As an activist, doctors know it. And the hardest thing in activism has been how to define what a patient with immunologic non-response is. What is a magic number? Is it 200, 250, 350? So that's a continuing debate right now, because it makes a big difference for the future activist work that we're doing for biopharma, for small companies mostly. The bigger companies are not really interested in this population, but the biologics coming through and the gene therapy companies are really definitely interested, and those are our targets for activism. Next slide, please. And we have a group, as I said, and the treatment action group is one of the leads in New York. I'm a co-author of a proposal we made to the FDA. The thing about treating our activists, our research in this population of lower T cells is that, well, first of all, there's a stigma. There's a big fear from companies because of the history that we have with IL-2. IL-2 basically increased CD4s dramatically, but at the end of the review of the data, we showed no improvements in survival. Obviously, back then, we didn't have as great treatments as we do now. So we cannot really do studies based on survival, because they'll take forever and we'll never get it done. So now we're trying to convince companies, especially biotech companies, that there are other measures of response if we can show that people not only have more CD4 cells, but also have other patient-reported outcomes like decreased in GI-related upset, which a lot of us have GI issues, or fatigue, or general quality of life or functional capacity. So those patient self-reported outcomes, it will be a new approach to doing studies in this population, as we show that CD4 can be boosted by different treatments. So we're working on it. We've been working on it for 6 years. We're only making inroads now. So, but the FDA is has been super amazingly supportive. Next slide, please. So, and this is what got me excited this last February at CROI. This is a, a long-term review of 6 years, the past six, 7 years, by Dr. Rafiq and his team all over the world. I mean, they're in Cleveland, in case Sangamo was a small biologic company that did most of the previous studies. In Montreal, there are people in Switzerland, in California, et cetera, doing the study. But anyways, this is the data was presented on 9 patients that have been followed since around 7 years ago until now. Sangamo was a small biotech company that we really wanted to support to expand their data, and I'm going to show what they did. But this is actually a review, a 7-year. Now we have experience with human data, a small cohort that has been living with higher T cells due to gene therapy. The next slide, please. And that really woke up a lot of us that have been working on this field, but kind of feel discouraged in the few years that we've had no response from industry. So basically, this was done several years ago, like 6-7 years ago, by Sangamo, where they would bring people with multidrug resistance and long-term survivors that had undetected viral load. They brought them in, extracted their T cells, enriched the T cells in the lab, the CD4 cells, modified them with what we call zinc finger nuclease by deleting, by actually cutting off the CCR5 receptor that HIV uses to infect. So basically making the CD4 cells resistant to HIV. We expand them and infuse them back. This happened only once per patient, only once. And it was kind of a concept, a proof of concept. and it was actually partially funded by the NIH. What they found, and this is a 2-year to 3-4 year review, is that not only that one infusion of the CCR5 modified T cells not only increased CD4s, and they were sustained, those CD4 increases, but also the reservoir, the HIV DNA, had been reduced even after 2 years of a follow-up by one single infusion. This company, believe it or not, even with this juicy data that we got, this is what got us excited, and we actually did that proposal to the FDA. They basically either run out of money or really kind of saw HIV INRs are too small of a population, so they moved to oncology, where everybody's working on now, cancer research. There's more money in that. And that's my own personal opinion, by the way. So this technology is still there, but Dr. Rafiq, the main investigator 6 years ago, did not abandon it. That's something we did not know until Croy, that he kept going. He says, I am going to keep going with this because it is something that we need to look at. Next one, please. So what he also found, Dr. Rafiq, is that, yes, he did an analysis not only of these 9 patients, but also found out that there's a specific CD4 cell, he called it Aurora, and don't ask me what that means because it's a long acronym for something, that these T cells are the younger T cells, almost like stem cell-like T cells, the ones that are like the mother of all the T cells. Actually, the ones that are more, he correlated them more to this sustained immune response, and they actually survived even after 6 years. Some of these 9 patients still have this RORA modified, CCR5 modified T cells. So they were shocked, he was, and we were, that these T cells have still in those patients' bodies after so long with one infusion. So he's also identified this type of T cells as the key T cells. So now he's proceeding into doing the same type of study, but only using a growth factor for the RORA T cells, the ones that make the most impact. So that's something that I'm excited about, obviously, for obvious reasons, because I have personal interest. And I'm really trying to support. This is a tiny little company, RORA Biologics, that, as most biotechs, don't have money, and they're trying to get funded by equity firms. Next slide, please. So basically, he's gonna do the same, or he's already enrolled some patients in a small pilot, where he's doing the same as Sangamo did 6-7 years ago, extract T cells, obviously, from the patients, expand just that subset of T cells, the Aurora T cells, and obviously treat them to delete their CCR5 receptor, grow them in the labs, and reinfuse them into patients. So basically, it's a more concentrated infusion of the most highly effective pseudo, and I would hate to call them that, stem cell type CD4 cells. And that's where we are at now. And as an activist group, we are behind. And we usually don't get behind industry because it's not, but in this case, it's such a small company with such a unique approach. And Dr. Rafiq never gave up, and he's really a friend of the community. We really have to. So this is what gets me excited, to really find a way to get this concept, more data, obviously, because we need more human data, and to get this, and not only do the study, but prove that those increased T cells, those additional T cells, actually are doing something for us. Because obviously we cannot prove to anybody that we're going to live longer. Like, for instance, I have 250 T cells. If my T cells were 500, and where most of them were CCR5 modified Aurora T cells, will I live any longer, or will I feel any different? Will I have better energy levels, better GI? We don't know. So that's where we are at now. The FDA says pick an endpoint and find a way to prove whether or not these increased T cells make any difference. So that's where we are. It's exciting. I think hopefully the story will be better in 6 months. Next slide is my last one. I apologize for probably talking too much. Anyways, summary. Dr. Gandhi probably she said most of this. So we need activists. We need more activism, especially in the immunological non-responder area. Boosting T cells, I think, is going to benefit the world in general. We can be used as guinea pigs for an immune boosting therapy, especially for the rest of the world, to improve immune function for not only us but for many people. And that's how I see it. It is personalized. Every single patient has a personalized treatment. So obviously, this can be made in mass quantities, like an oral or biologics. But I see this as probably the closest, is the only option we have where we have more humans exposed to this for so long, and they're doing well. So thank you very much. And email me if you need more information or if you want to get involved.